And I'm joined by Missouri State beat writer, really covers sports for the Springfield News Leader, Wyatt D. Wheeler. Wyatt, first I want to start with this, man. Your cover photo on your Twitter page has a photo that says Fire Wyatt D. Wheeler Arena. Is there a story?
Oh, well, it's JQH Arena on Missouri State's campus is getting a new name, and they're still searching for that name. So I put something on our website that's like, hey, here, you can name JQH Arena. What would you name it? And it was an anonymous thing, and somebody put in there Fire Wyatt D. Wheeler Arena. And I threw that out on Twitter, just laughing at it. And somebody went and made that for me. So it's been my cover photo ever since.
Sounds like you're doing it right, man. Sounds like you're doing it right up there.
No, bring it on. I enjoy that.
I know. So you've been covering the sports there for 3 years. Have you?
Yeah. I think this week's actually my third year anniversary. So going into my fourth year.
Congratulations. You're covering sports in a pandemic. So from there, I actually wanted to get into what we're experiencing now. So at the time that we're talking, we've seen Big Ten university presidents meet and basically make a decision to push back padded football. We've seen the Mid-American Conference decide to cancel fall football and postpone it until 2021 in the spring. We've seen 9 of 13 FCS conferences decide we're not playing football in the fall, and the Valley is one of them. That'd be Missouri Valley Football Conference, which is stacked, for which Missouri State is a part of. And you've done some excellent work here in the last, few days in tracking the changes and tracking how Missouri State is going about this. And it sounds like Kyle Moats, the athletic director there and actually chairperson for the FCS postseason committee, which I want to get back to, has said, we want to play Oklahoma and we don't care when. Is that still the sentiment?
Yeah, I would assume so. We haven't been shown otherwise. I think that's a big thing. That's a big thing that they were going into it. I didn't think the Missouri Valley Football Conference was going to do anything to take away a member school's chance at getting its guaranteed payments. So you have a school like Southern Illinois, who's also out there scheduled to play Kansas. And of course, Missouri State's scheduled to play Oklahoma with a $600,000 guarantee payment. And I mean, for a school like Missouri State, $600,000 is a pretty good chunk of the athletics budget for the year. So, I mean, they've been planning on possibly not having that the entire year. But the door is still open for them to get that. And I would assume they're going to do everything they can right now. And I think a part of that, I think Missouri State would have been prepared to play for a fall season. I think they're comfortable with what they've been doing behind the scenes on their testing and whatnot. So I think they're looking at. So I think when it became clear that there wasn't going to be an FCS postseason, there's teams in the Missouri Valley Football Conference, like of course North Dakota State, South Dakota State, Northern Iowa, Illinois State. They all think they can win a championship this year. So they think they want to be as close to being where that FCS playoffs would be, so they can get in and possibly win a championship. So it had to be moved, and then Missouri State's going to do everything it can to be able to get that money, and the league is allowing them to do so.
They also have one other guaranteed game on the schedule. I'm reading this from you, Tarleton State. The Texans standing up. So could we be seeing Missouri State just try to play 2 football games in the fall and then shut it down?
Yeah, that's kind of what it looks like. Kyle Moats said on Friday when we asked him about we just kind of went into some hypotheticals before the league announced it was closing down, just because it seemed to be going in that way, just with reports throughout the entire day. He said he would like to add a third team. If they were to do that, they're going to be allowed to play 3 teams, and he wants to bring them closer together. So that Tarleton State game is a home and home. So there's no guaranteed money attached to it, but you have a contract to play the game. So they got to play that game. They're probably going to move that game up because Tarleton schedule is kind of open right now. So try to move that closer to the Oklahoma game, so you're not playing a game in September, playing a game in November. But I think that's I think that adding a third game sounds like a possibility. He kind of made it sound like he wants it to be a home game, so I think that would try to be an FCS. See what other FCS schools open and try to do a home and home there. But yeah, it sounds like, I mean, they're completely open to trying to do that. I think it's a good thing for Missouri State, just for this football team. I think it's the best thing that can happen for them, honestly, is to have those extra games and have that extra experience when they didn't really have a spring under a new head coach. So this is kind of an extension of a spring going into next year. You kind of get that film to see what's good and what they can do. So it's all interesting. A 3-game season and then taking a few months off before an 8-game season. It sounds nuts, but it sounds like we're headed towards that.
It also feels like, from a football-only standpoint, a really interesting and encouraging idea, as you just said, because that had not occurred to me, that it could act like an extended spring period where you get to play padded football, you get to show what you can do against the number 6 team in the country, according to the coaches poll in the FBS, which is, punching way above, and then against other teams that you expect to try to compete with in not just the spring, but in the coming year. So that's really interesting. What is the mood from the players? How do they feel about how this is going on?
Yeah, we haven't had too much access to players. I've talked to a couple guys. Just from hearing how they've been, I think they've been bummed, but I think I think a lot of them are really worried about how eligibility is going to work on all this, because the NCAA hasn't made that clear yet. So I think they're worried about themselves first, which is understandable, just because they want to play football and have that eligibility. But they I think everybody's been paying attention and is kind of in the same way. They want to play. They understand what's going on. And they're questioning things like we are. I mean, we want to cover it. We want to watch it. And I think that's something that's being taken away from them. But I think I've just, from how the NCAA's been on some of that eligibility stuff, it seems like they've done right by the players, but kind of remains to be seen. But bummed. Missouri State doesn't really have the NFL talent players that you would think would be trying to sit out probably next year. But you see the other teams in the Missouri Valley Football Conference, teams like the Northern Iowa team has had a couple talented players on its defense decide they're going to sit out because they don't want to play a spring season right before the NFL draft. Trey Lance is the North Dakota State quarterback who is he was going into the season as a candidate for the number 1 overall pick, just because he threw 46 touchdowns and 0 interceptions last year. So that's another guy that I can't see playing. So it's gonna be interesting to see how that shakes the entire league.
You had an interesting story in July about the cost of COVID testing for Missouri State, and how has that relationship between Missouri State and Oklahoma been, in as far as keeping up with each other's testing standards? As I understand it, Oklahoma is trying to do everything it can to help Missouri State be healthy enough with no positive tests so that they can play their game and get that $600,000 payout.
Yeah, that communication has seemed to really work well for Missouri State. Kyle Motes and Oklahoma's athletics director, I believe, go back a little bit to when Oklahoma athletic director had a previous job
At Missouri.
So at MSU, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they've had a relationship for quite a while, to where they've had that behind the scenes, and then you see here that they've agreed to some testing. The testing standards and when they should be just getting some of that stuff free using the labs, just making sure everything was right, just to make sure they could play the game and everybody was safe. So I think that constant communication has worked out for both schools, because people want at Oklahoma a more difficult team than Missouri State to boost its resume, but in a year where there's a pandemic, I think that relationship and knowing that you've been able to establish this. Missouri State's willing to do everything Oklahoma needs them to do in order to play that game and be safe. I think that just pays. I think that goes a long way right here in the middle of something none of us have ever gone through before.
I'm both excited and appalled all at the same time because I've had the radio show for about 14 months now, right? And I have come up writing, and I've come up in a time when college football is booming and it's a $10 billion industry. And now we get to tell these stories and we get to break down the system, we get to break down the process and come to an understanding that while some folks might actually be thinking about strength of schedule in Missouri State, I'm thinking how great it would be to just see a football game get played and nobody get hurt or be in any sort of danger. Now, on top of that, this is a pay game for Oklahoma, and I don't know how much that's stressed. And by pay game for Oklahoma, I mean it's a pay-per-view game. I don't know how that's been stressed in Springfield, but like, yo, man, like it's a game that OU stands to make a lot of money from if they can get it pulled off. And I wonder how much of that goes into the thinking, because I've been a player advocate on all of this and that I want them to have a voice at the table and how this is going over. And when I was able to talk to a few of them, they're going, I didn't know that this game was going to be on pay-per-view. The OU kids did because they're used to these sorts of games being there. But does that factor in at all for, say, Bobby Petrino and his staff and how they feel? Are they being taken advantage of, or do they just want to go play?
I think they just want to go play. I mean, Bobby's been here, and he's only been able to coach in a handful of practices, see the guys out on the field. I don't think they feel like they're being taken advantage of, just from the talks I've had with a few of the players. It seems to be. I'm sure they're well aware that it's very important to their budgets and whatnot going into the year. But I mean, I think they understand that. They understand that it's the NCAA, and they've kind of been taken advantage of with stuff through that before. It's kind of what they're signing up for, just by not getting paid and everything that goes behind that. So I think I'm sure they're aware. I'm not sure. I don't think it's been stressed enough here that Oklahoma stands to benefit too much from it. I think they would have looked at, they might not be able to have people in the crowd, so it might not be worth it to them. But yeah, that is something that should be known. I mean, Oklahoma's still going to make money, fans in the stands or not. But I think it's just going to be something that I think it's just something that they're kind of used to by now.
I know that in January, the thing that we were all most excited about in Oklahoma was the opportunity for Bobby Petrino to be back into everybody's point of view and eyesight. And I saw when Kyle Motes made this decision to hire him, it obviously raised eyebrows for how he exited Arkansas and what has come of him afterward. How has he been received by Missouri State? How has he been received by the fans? What's been the tone for Bobby Petrino's arrival?
Well, the football down here has been so bad for so long. I mean, 30 years without a postseason appearance, coming off a 1-10 season, the second 1-10 season in the last 5 years, and that one win was in overtime against a team that probably would have beat them if they played the right quarterback from the start of the game. So, I mean, it's been so miserably bad to watch Missouri State football that I think a large portion of the fan base are really excited for it. You look at the players he's already brought in. You have a former four-star quarterback coming in to be the redshirt freshman starter. You have some corners coming in now from FBS programs. You have a linebacker who was a top 300 player out of high school. So I mean, he's bringing a little bit of excitement back. I mean, it's starting to become a program that's a little bit respectful. I think it's just even though there's the Bobby Petrino name and everything that comes with it, whether it was his exit at Arkansas or his exit with the Atlanta Falcons, or just the way he hires family members at Louisville, and is doing that here at Missouri State. I think a lot of people are. I think if people are just excited to have something to look forward to and to not waste their Saturdays on. I think it's been a positive thing so far. I think Bobby's been good with people in the community, and people want to see it. It's something that I'm not used to. I've covered Missouri State for 4 years now, going into my fifth. I've covered them at the student paper as well, and I mean, saw 12 wins during that time. So I think people are just ready for something different. I think just having a name like Bobby Petrino just kind of inserts a little life into a program that was pretty much dead.
Man, 12 years in 12 wins in 4 years. Oklahoma's won 12 games the last 3 years in a row, and it would not go well here. Like, people would not, we would not be okay, right? So I feel for you. We would not be okay. From that, though, I wanted to kind of stress this and get to the question, which is Oklahoma has been beneficial in seeing great offensive minds play against its defense and particularly go, head-to-head with Lincoln Riley and Chip Kelly at UCLA, Lane Kiffin at Florida Atlantic, and now Bobby Petrino, who all have this offensive genius about them, and perhaps they don't play their best football against Oklahoma because, like, Lane Kiffin was in a transition year. Cool. Chip Kelly's still trying to figure out how to UCLA get it. Bobby Petrino's team is not going to be anywhere near what people expected to be in the next couple of years. That said, tell me about this redshirt freshman quarterback, the 4-star, and is he the best player that you think they have today and the one that OU fans should get to know?
Yeah, I think Jaden Johnson, he's a transfer from Southern Miss. He was a 4-star out of high school. He was actually recruited by Bobby at Louisville before he got fired and had to go and sat out a year. So he was actually committed to play at Louisville under Bobby Petrino, but Petrino got fired a couple years ago. So I mean, this kid, just from the little bit I've been able to watch and see him throw the ball, I have not covered a quarterback down here in Southwest Missouri with that kind of arm. It's just it's pretty ball out of the hand. Fits it in the tight windows. I mean, I haven't seen him really run yet, but I've heard he's faster than what he looks like on his high school tape, which is really all there is out there on him right now. But I think he's going to be. I think he has a chance to be a pretty special guy here in the next few years. Just something Missouri State hasn't had at all since probably the early 90s. Early 90s. So I mean, this is someone to look forward to. They have some pretty intriguing guys in the secondary now. One's a Virginia Tech transfer that they just landed. He's 6'4". He looked like he was going to be a starter at Virginia Tech, but then he blew out his Achilles, and then he was going to play again the next year, and he blew out another Achilles. So if that guy could stay healthy, he would have probably been touted as a NFL draft pick out of Virginia Tech, just because that's what they produce, a lot of good secondary guys over there. And he was one of the top corners coming out of his high school class, and one of the top corners of JUCO ball when he first joined Virginia Tech. So he's a guy. There's a defensive end that Bobby's been really high on, Isaiah Sales, that can be a pretty big impact player. But I think everything starts at the quarterback, and everybody's just excited about what he can do. He's young and experienced. I wouldn't expect him to be too big of a factor against Oklahoma. They have some decent receivers. But I mean, Oklahoma's a different animal than what Missouri State's been facing, and it's kind of a tough one to throw in your first start as a quarterback ever when you had a short off season. So it'll be interesting. I think he's going to be really good here in the next few years. But game one against a college football playoff program is a big ask.
Well, hey, look, man, I hope he takes advantage of the stage just as I root for all of the kids. And I'm rooting for you, man. This was so good. Give Wyatt Wheeler a follow on Twitter at Wyatt Wheeler _NL. He is doing a fantastic job covering Missouri State athletics, and I so appreciate your time, Wyatt. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. Have me anytime.